Got it. Okay, we should be in record. All right, let's pray. Father God, we thank you again for bringing us to yourself through your Son, Jesus. We thank you, Lord, that you have chosen each one of us for a particular mission on your earth here. And I just pray for all my brothers and sisters as we are seeking your will, seeking your Holy Spirit, seeking to be sensitive to you, listening for your commands, your directions. As we meet together, Father, we just ask you to be here among us, direct our time together, watch over all the technology. Just pray for the health of each one of my brothers and sisters and the ministries that are represented here, Father. Please just continue to direct us and show us what you want us to be doing every moment of every day. It's in the name of your Son and our Savior, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, I'm glad we can all be together this morning. So it's morning here. I know it's evening in a few other places. And working out the time schedules is always the issue. I know Christine has some challenges with work. She was looking for an afternoon session. But of course, that would put Jim at about 1 or 2 in the morning. And so it's just really difficult to coordinate some of our schedules. But that's one of the challenges, but also one of the beauties of the fact that we all get to meet together from different parts of the world and share what the Lord is doing in our midst in various places. So, well, today we are going to spend some time on working with the literature and working with the literature review chapter. I'll just say a few words about that. Let me just put my screen on for one moment, and I'm going to bring Dr. Robinson Rogers on for us in very quickly. But just wanted to have one slide here up ahead of us here. You can see that slide, right? Research of sources. We're in the midst of putting together a proposal for a dissertation. I think we're moving into week 3 now, and you're going to be working on this week and next week, trying to find sources, and then next week you will develop one section of your literature review chapter. But right now, I want you to be doing some exploring of written sources. And, we call that the bibliographic section of a dissertation. Another section, of course, of a dissertation is to collect informational data from people, and that's either qualitative or quantitative. And we'll talk about those terms a little more in a few weeks. And then, of course, the other big issue of a dissertation process is the implementation strategy. Coming up with some kind of an intervention strategy that you can implement that will make a difference in the context of where the Lord has planted you. And we call that praxis in the theological language. It's always a challenge where to find sources, and I always tell students to start possibly even reviewing your own textbooks that you've had here at BGU as a beginning point. And there's a lot of good textbooks as you look back through your syllabi, textbooks that were helpful to you and that you can then begin to apply to the particular topic that you're using. You can also use online databases, looking for reports, journals. There's even, of course, whole books online now that we can access through electronic media. And Dr. Robinson Rogers will be working with us in a few minutes on Google Scholar as one of those online databases that you can utilize. Check libraries. BGU, of course, has an online library, and there's a lot of helpful resources on there you need to be checking into. If you've not been there for some reason, I really encourage you to go online. Our librarian, Jennifer Roman, has put together just a lot of good resources, and you need to take advantage of those resources in the BGU library online. There's when you're looking for sources, you're trying to find sources that are going to, help you define some different aspects of your project, just to understand your problem better. I've asked you to come up with at least a couple of sources when you put down your problem statement. You need to support that problem statement, at least a few sources. And so you've already done a little bit of that in the problem statement. But of course, you'll be developing the various aspects of your dissertation and even of your proposal. In a couple of weeks, you'll be working on the context chapter of the proposal, and that, of course, defines the environment where you're doing your project. It could be your community that you'd want to talk about in the context. It might be an organization that you're working within. You may be working within a particular culture that you need to give some definition to the content. And so there again, as you're looking at sources, you need to be keeping some of these components in mind as you are doing your research. You're going to be working on a biblical theological foundations chapter again in a few weeks. And there again, as you're looking for sources, keep that in mind. You're looking for sources that can help you develop some of the theological foundations for the project topic that you're working on. And of course, even as you begin to launch a strategy to address the issue that you're working with, you're going to need some help there, looking at other authors, what kinds of approaches have been out there in the literature community, and trying to determine what might be applicable to your project, what has been tried in the past, what hasn't worked, what has worked well, what is your approach to what you're doing, how does it differ from some of the other approaches. So just keeping some of those general categories in mind, I think, is helpful as you are searching for sources that will apply to your particular project. That's all I'm going to share right now. Depending on our time, I may share a few more slides on the literature review chapter specifically, but I really want to be able to have some time to have Dr. Robinson Rogers work with us on a few topics. He's mentioned that he would work with Google Scholar, which would be great, but he will also work with us a little bit on the whole area of research bias. How do we work on that area in our thinking, in our writing? We were talking about this yesterday in a faculty meeting, talking about the whole issue of critical thinking and the whole issue of becoming aware of our own perspective, our own biases as we are doing writing. And we all have our biases. We may think we are bias-free, but that we're deluding ourselves if we think that. We all have biases. We have a perspective. We have a lens through which we look at life and look at experiences. And we need to be very aware of that as we are doing writing, especially as we're working in a very disciplined approach in a dissertation. So I think Dr. Rogers will work on that a little bit with us today, and then we'll look at Google Scholar. And I'm even looking forward to having some work on that area. I've not used Google Scholar a lot, but I've given you in the literature for this week, the description, I've given you several databases, ProQuest, which is kind of a traditional database that's been around in academia for quite a long time. And we have a subscription to ProQuest through our library. And I would encourage you to look at that program. And I listed a whole lot of other databases online and other areas that you can be searching for sources. So with that, Dr. Robinson Rogers, we're going to spend a little time now, and I'm going to give you the platform. And whatever you want to share, we're just eager to learn today. So Go ahead, Rodney.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you so much, Bill. Hey, if you don't mind, I'd like to get just some quick introductions to the audience instead of just blasting everybody for a bunch of information.
Absolutely.
Just name introductions and where you're from, and that'll be great. Most of you I probably know already through our work at BGU, but I'd like to just know who's out there today, if you wouldn't mind, Dr. Payne.
Hello, this is Theo Yu. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I'm from Olympia, Washington, And this is my final class in the DTL program before I start my field research and for my thesis.
What is your thesis on, may I ask?
My focus right now is on how do NGOs that I'm working with in the Philippines respond to the increasing systematic violence that is undermining our community development work.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Rogers, good morning. This is Joanne Rowland.
Good morning, Joanne.
Just to let you know, I already have met with the other team members, but just by way of introduction again, my thesis is going to be on suicides, the phenomena which is happening in Guyana at the moment.
Thank you, Joanne.
All right, my name is Jim. I am from Malawi, and my dissertation will be on reducing the gap between the poor and the rich, more especially among the pastors in Malawi, thereby contributing to poverty alleviation in Malawi.
Wonderful. Well, wonderful. Thank you, Jim. Anyone else?
Good morning. This is Yvonne.
Good morning, Yvonne.
Good. Sorry to be a bit late. Now, I am posing a project on slow learners, preparing a program for them within an environment that will stimulate or motivate students to learn.
Okay. Thank you, Yvonne.
Welcome.
Is that it? Okay. So first off, I want to thank Dr. Payne for allowing me to just share a few thoughts with you. Hopefully.
One second, Rodney.
Okay.
Celicia, you had your hand up. Go ahead. Make sure we can hear you.
Oh. Am I being heard?
Yes, we're hearing you loud and clear, Celicia.
Hi, Celicia.
Hi, Dr. Rogers. I guess I was on a wrong channel or something. Good day, everyone. Well, Dr. Rogers, just introducing I'm Celicia Pariag. I am looking at what effects can be implemented through the theology of work principles. What effects can the implementation of theology of work principles have on the culture of women-led organizations well, I'm focusing it on Georgetown.
Okay.
So that's where I'll be spending some time.
Okay, good, good. Very good.
Good morning, this is Yvonne, and my project focuses on restorative justice practices, attempting to develop a program or an alternative approach to justice in the petty session court in the region in which I serve.
Okay, great, great, great. Wonderful. Okay. Anyone else before we move on? Okay, I wanted to, I'll start immediately sharing my screen because I think the longer part of this and probably the more weightier part of this discussion will be around how to evidence, create opportunities for evidencing what you're saying and getting away from some of the biases that happen. You know, we can do a great deal of research, and especially this is our time for literature review. This is a time also to kind of do some really deep self-examination as to some of the perspectives that we bring to the research process. And so I've asked Dr. Payne if he would allow me, just permit me a few minutes to provide some insights on how to think about, your research process and how to, to kind of uncover some of your own biases in going through. So we can give you all full out access to a lot of information, but how you're processing that information is very important. So a part of academic work, especially the dissertation process, is really thinking outside of the box, outside of ourselves, and also recognizing the biases that we bring to our investigation, okay? And let me make this plain, simple statement, and I'm hoping that, that it's not an offense to anyone, but let me just say this, that you're not in a dissertation process to prove your point, okay? You're not in a research process to prove a point. In fact, if you're really curious, and I hope that you all are, if you're curious, you actually want to disprove what you're thinking. That way, you'll find out a broader level of work that's being done. You'll be doing a lot more work in terms of identifying research that might contradict things that you're saying. Oftentimes, one of the biggest mistakes that we make when we're doing research is we're out to prove what we think is right. Well, there's a whole bunch of resources out there that'll tell you, absolutely, it'll tell you exactly what you want. But as an academic, what we want to make sure you're doing is seeing the broader field. And we're going to talk about macro, we're going to talk about meso, as well as micro research. Those are areas that you have to have a clear understanding about when you're doing a broad research in terms of literature review. You want to understand what you're actually looking for, at least being able to identify whether I'm working with material that is micro, meso, and I say micro, M-I-C-R-O, or meso, M-E-S-O, or macro. Okay, I'm looking at different materials that might be speaking to different aspects of those, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about those things. What I'm going to be doing is sharing with you my screen, and it will outline some of the things that I hope will be useful for you today. And then at the end of it, if you don't mind, Dr. Payne, then I'll do the quick review on Google Scholar, how to utilize it, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to start out with sharing the screen, my screen, if I can get to it. Let's see. There we go. All right. You just heard me say something about meso-level analysis. It indicates a population size that falls between micro and macro levels. With that, we put I have to move this a bit. All right. So there are operations of things that are going on between the macro and the micro. That's called meso. What we're going to be looking at, I want to show you a diagram right after we finish this, give you an understanding what's in the meso level, okay? But when we're doing literature review, what we want to make sure is that we are clear that I'm actually doing literature review around macro or micro or meso level functionings that affect my research. I want to make sure you're clear about that. Now, how do we avoid bias? Make sure that we're objective in everything that we're talking about, which means that there's proof to what we're saying. And we're also being inclusive so that when people read what you're saying, they can trust what you're saying because you're actually utilizing information that's provable with authoritative material, and it's also inclusive. We're going to talk about what it means to be inclusive in writing, in doctoral writing. Very important that we are objective, and our skill level suggests, especially at the doctoral level, it will suggest that we are using an academic voice. Okay, and this is what we should all be attempting in every way to accomplish. We're finding an academic voice when, in fact, you're writing a dissertation. So it's good to first have a passion for what you're doing. Okay, if you don't have a passion for it, if it's just something that you're just wanting to get done with, you're done with this whole idea of getting a doctorate, you just want to walk away with your paper and get your title. Well, I tell you something, that's going to be very difficult for you to make it through a dissertation process and have something exciting and contributable to a field of interest. What we want to make sure you're writing about is something that you're absolutely passionate about. Okay, that's so important. And to be passive and objective is the goal. Okay, because when you're passive and objective, when you're passionate, forgive me, when you're passionate and objective, it's going to create an opportunity for us, people who are reading your work, to be able to identify unbiased writing. And that's going to cause us to trust what you're writing. Okay, so academic voice is important, that you're recognizing that you're developing an academic voice, so important. And so your passion on a particular topic is absolutely a priority. So think about what you're passionate about and the questions that you're gearing towards that particular passion. All of those things will require some alignment, and that alignment of your passion, of your sense of being objective, that will help, produce a really quality piece of work. Very important. One of the big problems that we see in academic writing is generalizations. Stay away from generalizations. Avoid making statements like all or never. Just keep that out of your language when you're writing, because there's no such thing in academic writing as all or never. And if it is, you're going to have a heck of a time trying to prove it, especially if Dr. Payne or I is reading your work. So here's an example. Here's a biased statement. Educators do not consider each child's particular learning style when developing lessons. So the sentence does not acknowledge the variation within the population of educators, implying that all educators are like this. Here's a better statement. Some educators do not consider each child's particular learning style when developing lessons. The difference is that we're not saying that all educators do not acknowledge variations. So this sentence acknowledges that there are some educators who do not fall into this category, that all educators are not the same. Remember, there's no such thing in academic writing as all or never. So eliminate that kind of thinking out of your writing. Get it out of your mind. All churches don't do the same thing. All churches are not dealing with the problem the same way. Okay, so eliminate that kind of language. Evidence, which I know Dr. Payne has been talking with you about. Everything has to be supported. So we support our statements. When we write a thought down on paper, you ask yourself, who says that? By whose authority am I able to speak this? Okay, and then I prove that. So we go into the biased statement that says third grade boys are chronically disruptive, while girls are always eager to please. Here are all boys are generalized as having the same disruptive behavior, while the writer is also assuming all girls are better behaved. This shows a bias towards girls. Must be eliminated. You must check. Always, when you're making blanket statements, you have to ask yourself, says who? So a better statement is, in Clooney's 2008 study of Kansas City third graders, 35% of the boys and 68% of the girls were able to complete instructions for a tedious assignment without showing signs of agitation. So this sentence is more specific, telling the readers the exact percentage of girls and boys that exhibit the behavior, avoiding the assumptions implied by previous vague phrasing. Your phrasing in obtaining an academic voice, you check your phrases. What are you trying to say? And by whose authority are you speaking this? Are you able to say this? Become self-aware. Be aware of your own biases, how these may be expressed in writing. Here's some examples. Assumptions about professors. Here's a biased opinion. The teacher should use technology when she is teaching her class. This sentence assumes that teachers are female, number one. How do we see that? It says when she is teaching her class. So again, we're using non-inclusive language. This sentence assumes that teachers are female, making assumptions about the gender of this profession and creating gender bias. So some of us write, sometimes we write with unconsciously, and we are not inclusive in our writing, and we are really gender biased in our writing. So a better sentence would be, teachers should use technology when they are teaching their classes. Okay, so that includes all genders. This statement does not use gender-specific pronouns, but acknowledges that teachers can be male, female, or another gender. Note that this sentence avoids bias by changing the singular teacher to be plural and uses plural pronouns. Excuse me. Beliefs about specific populations, and this is a big one, okay? I see this all the time when I'm supervising dissertations. Excuse me. Here's a biased statement. Family is very important to the Hispanic population in my town. Well, that sounds nice, right? It sounds simple. You know, it's based on my assumptions, my reality, my context. So it sounds absolutely fine, but it's absolutely biased. The sentence assumes that all people of Hispanic heritage consider family to be important, especially those in the author's town. There's not any room given for differences between these families, or recognizing that some people of Hispanic heritage may not consider family to be important at all. That's a huge generalization, but it's sometimes captured in what we think in our micro understanding of our environment, of our context. Well, that's a big statement in doctoral writing, in dissertation writing. Here's a better statement. According to Watson, 2011, family is important to 47% of the Hispanic families in Auburn, in Indiana. Okay, in Auburn, Indiana, he has proved the point. A research study suggests that 47% of the families, family is important to 47% in Auburn, Indiana. This revision is more specific and considers the individual differences between Hispanic families by reporting the specific percentage of those who consider family to be important. It also gives specific information about who conducted the study and where, and giving credibility to the writer. That's what you want to make sure, that what you're stating has credibility. Statements based solely on personal experience. This is another big one, okay? It is often biased when we say, my daughter texts constantly, which shows that teenagers use cell phones more than they did in the past. So the statement makes an assumption about all teenagers without basing it on research, but on the author's own personal experience. While personal experiences are sometimes helpful, use them as supporting examples rather than the sole basis for assertions. So here's a better statement. Teenagers' use of cell phones, specifically for texting, has increased 33% in the last 2 years, a study done by McDonald in 2011. So this sentence presents the same assertion, but uses specific statistical data to support the ideal, rather than basing this statement on one teenager's behavior. It uses a study that surveyed a larger sample of teenagers. When we talk about objectivity, bias does not just have negative implications. Writers who are too sympathetic are also displaying bias. Now get this, this is important. Your sympathy has no place in academic writing, okay? It has no place in academic writing. It's just about the facts. It's about the facts. And it is also exploring some of your understanding of the problems. But we also want to make sure that your sympathy do not overshadow the facts. So giving an overly favorable opinion of someone can eliminate objectivity. Okay? Objectivity is important, and that's what we're looking for in the dissertation process. So biased would say something like this: while all teachers are very good at helping students learn, No Child Left Behind hinders teachers, not allowing them to serve students well. Without NCLB, teachers will be able to perform their jobs perfectly. You see the bias in that? Absolutely biased. And it's bias in favor of getting rid of NCLB, No Child Left Behind. Well, I don't necessarily like No Child Left Behind either, but there's a way to approach it. So this statement is sympathetic towards teachers, stating that all teachers could help students if only the government had not passed NCLB. It assumes all teachers excel at helping students, not allowing for the possibility that some teachers are not very good at their jobs. Here's a better statement. While most teachers are able to help students learn, No Child Left Behind hinders teachers, making it more difficult to serve students well. Although there are other issues that affect teachers' ability to perform their jobs well, without NCLB, more teachers would serve their students better. Okay. This revision takes into account that there are other issues affecting teachers' performances besides No Child Left Behind, and provides a more balanced view of teachers' ability to help students. Okay? So a balance, objectivity requires a balance of views, as well as credible resources to back up your statements. Sensitivity. Sensitive language helps you avoid bias. When you have an opportunity, go to your APA manuals and read 71 through 76. Page 71 through 76 talks about sensitive language, inclusive language. Very important. Page 71 through 76 in your own time. Be specific rather than descriptive. So here's a bias. I surveyed older adults while collecting data. I surveyed older adults while collecting data. The statement does not give specific information about the age of the participants, allowing the reader to make assumptions. Without specific information, older adults could refer to anyone who is 65 years and older. So we want to be specific. A better statement is, I surveyed participants between ages 70 and 84 while collecting data. Very specific. Now I have a range of people, and I've taken away the assumptions out of my research, out of my document. This is about, again, I'll continue to say this, repeat this. This is about finding your academic voice. So this statement specifically tells the reader what the age range was for the participants in the survey, ensuring that the reader does not make assumptions about the ages of the participants. You do not want your readers to make any assumptions. They don't have to do that because you're the voice. You're giving them credible information. You're giving them objectivity. You're not giving them your opinion about anything. You're asserting what has been found out through valuable research. Keep your wording parallel. Now, I want you to be very aware of this, because again, this is something I see happen a lot with our dissertations. Bias. The man and female turn out to be directors of the Red Cross. While man is fine on its own, but paired with female, it is not parallel. So additionally, female should only be used as an adjective, i.e. the female participant, not as a noun, like in this sentence. Instead, always use man with woman and male with female. and only use male and female as adjectives and man and woman as nouns. That's parallel, making sure that you are using words parallel to each other. So a better statement is the man and the woman turned out to be the directors of the Red Cross. You can also use the female and the male as, again, adjectives. But they have to be parallel in wording. Be aware of sexual identity terms. Those often change, so consult your APA style guides. You can click on your www at apastyle.org. It will talk to you more about that as well. Biased. The population who were homosexual in the survey responded no 75% of the time. And you see here, we even have a credible source here, Martin 2010, but it's still biased. In this sentence, the entire population is considered to be homosexual, which is not very descriptive. Per APA, page 74, homosexual is not specific enough term. Better. The population who were lesbian responded no 75% of the time. You see the difference? These are just examples for you. Instead, in this sentence, the term lesbian is used to be more specific about the sexual orientation of the population surveyed. Okay? So when you use the term homosexual, that's a huge population that includes male and female. No, in this particular survey, it identified 75% of the lesbians. Here's another big area. Use parallel racial and ethnic identity terms. Biased. Those surveyed who are African American responded similarly to those who reported being white. In comparison, the non-whites also responded similarly to the Asians surveyed. There are many forms of non-parallel terms here. The term African American is paired with white, which is not parallel. The African American population is also labeled as non-white, using one racial group as the primary group. The term Asian is also not parallel. Here's a better statement. Those surveyed who were African American responded similarly to those who reported being European American. In comparison, the African Americans also responded similar to the Japanese Americans surveyed. The census uses parallel terms for all racial identities, as well as using the specific term Japanese American. For detailed instructions on these terms, again, look up your apa.org style. Use people first language when discussing labels. Biased. The autistic child worked with teachers who taught all of the special children at the school. This sentence only defines the children by their labels, either autistic or disabled, instead of acknowledging that they are people first. Here's a better statement. The child with autism worked with the teacher who taught all of the children with disabilities at the school. Here, the child or children are always placed first with a label named afterwards. People first, then label second. Do not label people. People first, and then label. Do not use the label to identify people, is what I'm saying. Forgive me. This way, the reader always sees the children first and then their label or disorder. The phrase special children is also changed to children with disabilities, as the term special has become colloquial. There's some resources that I'm going to be sharing with you. These are older resources, but they're good for understanding the topic that I'm about to go in next: meso paradigms and meso organizational behavior. So these are some older resources, and you don't have to worry. I'll share this, Bill. I'll share this with you so you can share with the class as well. Okay. Are there any questions?
Dr. Rogers.
Yes.
Dr. Rogers.
Yes. Please identify yourself, because and if you can speak up a bit.
Patrick West from Guyana.
Okay. Yes. How are you today?
I am great. I'm sorry that I can't have any internet on my computer. I'm on my phone. That is why I can't do the other indication.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah. Yes, me too. But I'm happy to be here. And I was when you were dealing with the people first language issue, I am wondering if this would apply to when you're dealing with ethnicities as well.
Okay.
Instead of particular behaviors, can we apply that when we're dealing with ethnic groups?
Okay.
Or culture?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great question. So when you're specifying that, for instance, an ethnic group, and I think it's good, we can identify people based on their ethnicity. All right, as long as we are being distinct in, who they are. For instance, if it's African American, it's African American. If it's Guyanese, if it's Indo-Guyanese, we need to make that statement. Okay, so you're absolutely right. It's okay to identify people by their ethnicity as long as we're not, as long as we are being specific about who they are. And if you're identifying some traits, and then you're also utilizing credible information to document what you're about to say regarding this particular group.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else?
This is Bill. Let me just mention one issue since we're on that topic. We kind of hold to a policy at BGU, like we've already talked, that Dr. Rogers has talked about, in terms of gender inclusiveness. And we get into this many times, especially when we're talking to, the Bible. We'll talk about, God created man, and we sometimes will just feel like that's humanity. It's okay to use that in a specific term. God created the man, Adam. Okay, now we're accurate, but we cannot use man as a generic term for humanity any longer. We're quite firm on that issue. We try to use issues like humanity, mankind, not mankind, humankind, rather than mankind. So again, just another one of those areas where we're trying to be sensitive to language, and sensitive to all people who may be involved as our readers.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent. So I am, if no one has any other questions, I'm certainly going to be sharing this document with you, Dr. Payne, so that you can distribute to the students and use as you choose.
That'll be very helpful. Yeah, this is very critical information for us all, I think.
Great, great. I'm looking for one other. I want to show a diagram. Let's see, where did I put that thing? I meant to have this up before I got to the class. Let's see. That's not it. me go back here.
While Dr. Rogers is looking for that, I might mention, and there's a document that I've referred you to a few times. It's Errors in Academic Writing. I think the name now is called 22 Tips from the Technical Reader, because my wife Roxy is the technical reader. And one of the issues there is, and Dr. Rogers mentioned it, in terms of using the plural. You can very often you can objectify a sentence just by using the plural. Then you don't have to deal with the he, she, etc. You can use the plural form, and then you can use they, which again is often becomes a lot less awkward. So again, I would encourage you to look at that particular document. I think it's under the info tab on the Populi site. And just make sure you're aware of those academic writing issues, because the technical reader will send your paper back to you with all kinds of red on that paper if you've not observed those writing issues as you're putting together a dissertation.
Yes. Well, I wanted to ask the question before I go into this next. How many people are clear, have a clear understanding of the difference between a preventive measure and a intervention?
I think I do.
Okay.
I do, Patrick.
Well, share, please.
Hello?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you. This Patrick?
Yes. Yes. Intervention is basically done to mitigate against what may have occurred in a particular situation. And preventative measures are those that you will work on to ensure that the occurrence does not occur, or if it occurs, the effects of it are not as damaging as previously thought it would have been.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so very much. So,
can I use the term, sorry, Dr. Rogers?
Sure.
And Steve? I was thinking of proactive and reactive.
Okay.
Proactive would be more the preventative measure, whereas you're intervening, it's more reactive. The situation, as Patrick has said, it's already happening. So you're getting in there, you're reacting to it.
Okay. Okay, so I always use this. This is a wonderful kind of metaphor for those of you who still might be struggling with it. I always use this metaphor as a story, a narrative that points to the difference between the two. Oftentimes, especially as a pastor, I recognize that we are acting prescriptively to help people. We have feeding programs, we have clothing programs, we have different things that we do in terms of health initiatives and so on and so forth. And so one of the metaphors of has become almost universal, and you may have already heard this before. Oftentimes we see this, the babies floating down the stream metaphor. And we see these babies, about to drown, and we jump in and we grab the baby and rescue the baby. And next thing you know, there's another baby coming down the river. We jump in the river, we grab the baby, rescue the baby from drowning, and we never really examine or think about who's throwing the baby in the river. Why is this happening? We don't go upstream to find out what's going on, to try to create a prevention or to think about what needs to happen. Now, all of that in many ways can be seen as an intervention. The response to both jumping in the stream as well as going up the stream. But what the prevention does is it gives us a way of thinking about the bigger picture. A way of looking at the bigger picture, examining the bigger picture. So when the doctor tells you to eat healthy, to drink plenty of water during the day, when they tell you to get exercise, all of those things are seen as preventive measures because there's a bigger picture in relationship to, your health and what your body needs. And if you sustain these kinds of habits, you will prevent certain kinds of illnesses. With the thinking about prevention, one of the things that happens in urban centers around the world is that particularly churches have a huge problem of looking at what is prevention. We deal more with intervention than we do. It's the prescriptive role of doing this, doing that. And we don't necessarily, many churches don't engage in political or economic systems that might be creating the problems that are happening in their community. So when you think about your dissertation, I want you to take a look at the different systems, right, that you're dealing with. Can everybody see this on your page? Can everybody see this?
No, we're not seeing anything. It's the blue screen.
Anything, Dr. Rogers.
Okay.
I'm not. I'm on my phone, please.
Oh, I'm sorry about this. So I'll do. I don't know why I'm not being able to share. Let's see.
I will get the recording later, so I will look at it from that.
Okay, very good.
When you went to the share screen, Rodney, did you actually pick out the document that you're looking at? It won't just show it on your screen, what's on your screen.
Okay, let me see here.
So you got to choose it from that list that comes up once you hit share screen.
I see it. I got it highlighted, but it's not coming up.
So you highlight it, and then there's a share something. There's another button you have to hit, I think, on that. It says share. I think it's on the bottom right or left corner.
So do I have to close the first one?
I think so, yeah.
Okay,
I think you have to stop sharing and then start sharing again.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's see. Bill, am I okay on time?
Yeah. I just want to hold this session to about an hour and a half, so we're good.
Okay, just very good. Now, does everybody see that?
Yeah, we're seeing that fine now.
Yes, we're listening.
Okay, excellent. So when you think about these three areas, this one has actually four. There's microsystems that are happening, and some of us are addressing in our dissertation work, we're addressing microsystems. Some are addressing mesosystems. So, in these different circles, you'll see, we'll go back down to it through them to talk about these different systems. Then there's the exosystems, and then there's the macro systems. And some combine the exosystem and the macro system together. But some, in some ways, I think it's good to eke out both, to have a conversation about how these systems kind of work around some of the problems that we're seeing. So when we talk about intervention, it's good to have some idea that when I'm writing either from a macro, a meso, an exo, or a macro. I'm looking at the problem from a variety of different systems that are, affecting the life of our community or whatever the problem might be. Okay, so in the micro, we got the child in the center, and we see, all of these influences that are happening to a particular child. Okay, the neighborhood, the adults around, the peers, the child, the teachers, the school. All of these things are having an impact on the micro inside the life of this child. And then there's, when we break it out into a larger picture, the meso is, gives us a sense that, the neighborhood around us, the school, the home, the religious setting, all of these things are playing a part in how this child is developing. And then on the exosystems, then you have local industry. Businesses affect how children are being raised in communities. I'll give you an example of something back in the 70s, a town called Dayton, Ohio, which was a flourishing town. There was industry there. There was the auto industry. There's the iron industry. A number of industries were really blossoming well, and the middle class living was really nice. People had the 2 cars to home. One parent at home working, the father or the mother working in the factory, and that town in 1970, all of a sudden, the music that began to come out of that town in the 70s and 80s affected the entire world. In Dayton, Ohio, it's just a little place in Ohio, little country town in Ohio. But what happened is that the parents were making good enough money where they could actually offer their children musical lessons, and they paid for instruments and musical lessons during a period of about 15 years, and all of a sudden it became known as Funky Town. I mean, literally the music that came out of it, it was pop, it was R&B music, but it affected generations, and my children today still listen to that music. It was that profound. But the impact of local industry on children does have a way of filtering into the life of a family and enriches or disempowers communities and children. Mass media, parents, workplace, local government, school board, all of those reside in the exosystems. And then on the macro, we're doing the big research on dominant beliefs and ideologies around, family or something of that nature. So in a case where, for instance, we have somebody dealing with, our brother in Maui is dealing with poverty issues or suicide in Guyana, and NGOs in the Philippines and violence, we're not just going to be looking for information in the Philippines or Guyana and Maui. We're going to be looking at the kind of question that you have regarding your particular concern around the world. What happens in other contexts, the macro systems, things that are actually affecting, whether it's the family or NGOs or suicide rates around the world. We want to be able to be conversant with information that's going on all around the world, not just our context. So when we break into our context, we have even a better understanding of some of the influences that are happening outside of what we necessarily see or how we understand the problem. We want to be able to, at the doctoral level, we want to be able to be conversant with a number of different ways of seeing the problem, okay? And some of them will not hold, some of your assumptions will not hold up to what you're finding. And that's the importance of doctoral work, to be able to argue both pro and cons, to be able to see the larger picture. And the only way that we can do that is really see and understand, have a dialogue within the macro systems, the exosystems, the mesosystems, and the microsystems to understand what's going on, the functions. So I'm going to stop there. Are there any questions?
Not from me. Patrick here, not from me.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Rogers, so basically what you're saying as we focus on our problem, because each of us had problems, and we're suggesting a problem that we'll be addressing in our dissertation. However, are you saying that we should look at different aspects in each of these systems as it relates to our problem so that we have a wider perspective?
No, I think you need to be aware that these systems exist.
Okay, I get you.
Right.
Okay.
And right. So you got 125 pages you have to produce, in your dissertation. There's no way that you can do a diagnostic of all these, but you at least know when you're doing your literature review, you want to get a bigger picture of the problem.
Yeah. because I think if we go, I was looking at, especially for my problem, I was looking at all of Guyana, and then I had to say, no, I can't, because then it will take me years to complete.
Exactly.
So I now had to narrow it down to Georgetown, which is a smaller community, and then maybe further narrow it down to specific industries or specific outlets that I can focus on, areas, organizations led by, and then I had to focus it now on women-led organizations, which narrows it down further.
Yes.
So just to be able to grapple with the time frame that I'm working with, and
yes.
The information that will be available at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to know, how do we approach this? But I fully understand, having that macro that it exists out there, I might just be one stone in the bucket of water, but
yes.
there are other organizations who might be attempting these same principles, and they may not work, or they will work.
Yes.
They may not attempt them at all.
Exactly. And I think that you're exactly right. You're going to be filtering it down. You're going to be narrowing it down, but you at least have been conversant with the wider data source, a larger data source that's giving you a sense that that you're on the right track, and you're also getting a better understanding that some of the issues that you're dealing with in these in a particular subject matter. So as a doctoral student, one of the things that I encourage a lot is curiosity, right? If you're not curious, it's really hard to engage a really serious process. If you just want to get through it, people can get through their doctoral work, clearly, but if you're really curious, this is an opportunity. Your dissertation is an opportunity to be curious and to bring new information that you didn't have before. Instead of being locked into a certain way of thinking, you can open up your minds and actually explore the world around you. And I encourage that. And so with the process, your process is important. I heard Dr. Payne say that your methodologies, your process of gathering information is important. But what no one can give you, we can put a lot of resource material in front of you. No one can give you curiosity. Either you have it or you don't, or maybe you're developing it. But I hope that you come to the process of research with curiosity. Okay, Patrick, are you talking? If you are, we can't hear you.
No, I wasn't saying anything, but I thank you for that intervention.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, quickly, just another diagram. Youth, family, community, culture, all of these are part of things that we look at in terms of preventive, interventive works. Just a little diagram. I won't spend much time on this, but as you think about what your problem and what you're identifying, or the population that you're targeting, it might be good for you to draw out a diagram just for your own, as you're creating your process for your dissertation. You might want to just draw out your own diagram that helps you stay focused as you're doing your literature review. A diagram will help you to maintain a sense of focus as to what I'm looking for. If that's a part of your process, it would be very helpful. It was helpful to me when I was going through the dissertation process. I had to draw. I'm a visual person, so I had to actually draw it out. I had to see it so that I wouldn't go from here, there, and everywhere, because you're going to, the fun part about your literature review is that you got an opportunity to look at all of these different systems, that may be impacting your problem or have some influence on your problem. But you can easily get off course and start writing, going down the rabbit hole, and start writing about things that don't necessarily, hold water at the end of the day.
Mm. Let me make one comment.
Sure.
Right. As we were thinking about narrowing a topic, etc., I think it's good. I'll use Jim's project, who's working with poverty in Malawi. If we used poverty in Malawi as the main problem statement, then that would be a bit broad. Okay, we can indicate that in the writing that you're aware that that is a major issue in Malawi. Then Jim, though, is going on that he's going to focus on that problem as it is manifested within the Malawi Assembly of God congregations and pastors. So that's narrowing the focus of that problem to a specific context. And so I think that's one of the issues that we can always be doing, is that being aware of a broad problem, but then going from that, we'll go from the macro level, moving down into more of a micro level, that this particular project is going to deal with the problem as it's demonstrated within a particular context. And I think you did the same thing, Joanne, when you mentioned, going to specifically Georgetown as opposed to more of a macro view. So again, that is the way that we can narrow our problem statement. We can indicate at the beginning a general statement, and then as you go through the problem statement, it becomes narrowed to a particular context in which you're working.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really, sometimes that could be frustrating to kind of get to that place of narrow, but if you're doing some really strong literature review, you'll get there, Just take your time and continue to be curious. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to move from one question to another question, to a new question that might seem like it's throwing off where you were going, but that question might lead you to a deeper understanding of the concerns that you have. Okay.
Dr. Rogers, may I ask a question, please, in terms of my my research? There is a lot of work out there in terms of previous studies on the whole range of things. Now, my question is, do I focus a lot on the preamble in terms of, what suicide is all about and all that stuff? Or do I get into the nitty-gritty of looking at, I'm just going to go on to video so you can see me a little bit. Look specifically at the theory side, because really that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm hoping to focus on. So my question really is, how much time must I spend in a lot of, huge research at the macro level and all the various levels that we discussed today, as opposed to getting in there and dealing with theoretical work? Grounded theory, IPA, let's look at those things. Let's look at that. Is my question understood?
Okay, yeah, it's understood. So, Joanne, one of
yes.
things that
Rodney, we've lost some volume on yours there. Not sure what's going on.
Really? Okay.
There, now we had a little better.
You can, okay. Good. I actually put my headset in because I was having problems hearing you guys.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So Joanne, because with IPA, the methodology that you're using, what you're going to be doing is, in this kind of approach, you're going to be, it's kind of interesting that you kind of come in with no opinions at all. You're doing strict observation and analysis. Okay. You're doing strict observations and analysis with the import of moving from observation to analysis to some theoretical statement. Okay, that can be proven. If somebody else did the same thing, they will be able to prove it. So, you're looking at, and this is one of those things that, as you said, there's a lot of information out there. What you will have to do, and we're going to be kind of eking out, is whether or not the big picture, it gives us some ideal of the problem in its general state. But what you're looking to do, so the macro is not going to be as important as the micro factors, because you're seeing that there is a high level of suicide amongst a particular population in Guyana. So you're going to be getting a lot of you're going to be getting general information, but you're really going to focus most of your attention on the micro, the micro, the meso, and see how that there's some bridges that are happening within that context. So I would suggest that the micro become a big focus of what you're doing, because the time and attention that you're going to need with individuals to get that in, to really drill down and make meaning out of what's being said, but being aware of the different systems that are affecting this is going to be important. But your micro work is really going to be, it's kind of has the heavier sense of investigation. Did that answer your question, Joanne?
Thank you. I didn't want to lose too much time going down the track where I spend doing lots of documentation, which is good. But I wanted to focus really on the issue. I'm curious about what this whole thing is about. And I just want to make sure that I get as much into those 125 pages in.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then you're there to help me.
Yeah. So yeah, but it's good to have the macro, what's going on in Guyana, what's been happening, what's happening around the world where this phenomena is happening, and be able to make some comparisons. So it's going to help you in your process of making meaning out of what you're getting in your micro.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So with that being said, Dr. Payne, I'm ready to go to Google Scholar, if there's no questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, great. All right.
Just let you go.
Let's see. Oh, I get to my desktop. No, not it. So I want to get to my desktop, and I can't.
Should be an icon when you go to share screen. I think desktop is one of the default.
Oh, it is?
Icons, I think, yeah.
Okay. That keeps going back to this. Okay, that's what I'm going to do.
Again, I think you have to stop sharing and then start sharing again, I think.
Okay.
And see what comes up.
All right. Can you see anything on my page so far?
Right now, we're just seeing the Firefox homepage change notification.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Now we're seeing your
Okay,
mail.
good. Very good. Okay. So everyone, I'm going to suggest that you, and everyone can do this, go to Google and type in Google Scholar. And when that comes up, click Google Scholar.
Yeah.
And then include Google Scholar on your taskbar. It will become a useful tool for you. Google Scholar, it scales a number of the databases around the world. It's not a one-stop. It is absolutely not a one-stop database source. But it is useful for you in terms of getting information on peer-reviewed journals. Now, why are peer-reviewed journals important? Because first and foremost, your problem, the problem that you're researching, in more cases than not, someone has asked the same questions regarding the problem that you've identified. And in peer-reviewed writing, you have scholars that are that have either researched the problem or researched different components of the problem that might help you better understand the problem overall. I like it because I can put, you see up here, it has a library. I can actually find different sources and I put it in my library for later use. I can do citations, makes citations easier. And as an academic, it gives me opportunities also to receive alerts around particular subjects that I am interested in, that I want to stay aware of what's happening in the field that I'm interested in. So I am interested in industrial and organization psychology and leadership development. So a lot of my alerts fall within these subject matters, okay? So I get on a minimum, on a weekly basis, I get a minimum of maybe 30 to 40 articles that pop up that I may or may not be interested in, but it's probably some of the most recent studies in these areas that that keep me abreast of what's going on. And for you, I'm not certain if students are able to do this without a BGU address, but professors are. Professors can get these alerts, set up their own alerts for their interest area of interest. And so it keeps us abreast of the newest stuff that's coming out, the newest research. It keeps us capable of speaking to some of the concerns of our day. Very important. Now, I want to identify how best to use this. You know, let's take, for instance, poverty in Malawi. Let's see if anybody has done some research in that area. I'm just using it as a broad subject. Let's see what research has been done regarding poverty in Malawi. Am I spelling that right? That's not right, is it?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll hit the button, see what's up. Wow.
Here we go. Yeah.
So we see different things that are happening. Now, all of these articles, some of these are peer-reviewed articles, which means peer-reviewed, they have been reviewed by other scholars and they say this is acceptable, this is an acceptable study, okay? And it has been published. Or they go through an institution as well, and it goes through a rigorous process in which the information is reviewed and then released for publication. So all of these are not peer reviewed, and you got to recognize that just because you're on Google Scholar does not mean that they're all peer reviewed. All right. So what we see is immediately we see something. I always look at the date first. Okay. How far do I want to go back? If I want to get some foundational information, I'll go back as far as I need to go back to get foundational information. How long ago have people, been doing research, and what kind of research have they been doing? So that's the first thing I look at. I look at the date of the research. Then also I look at the organization, the institution that is publishing the research, World Development. Then also look at the authors of it. Okay. This is just my personal preference on how I go about, kind of systematically eliminating, because there's so much information out there in your subject matter. You don't have enough time to go through everything. Okay. And so this can be cited. I can cite it, hit the cite button. It'll bring it up in MLA, APA, Chicago, Harvard, or Vancouver style of citation. And so if I wanted to save it, I just click it, right click it, copy it to my document wherever I want to place it. Okay. So I'm looking down the page. By the way, those of you who are dealing with some level of health issue, this is probably one of the best databases you'll find in terms of mental health, disabilities. Taylor and Francis. Joanne? I'm specific.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I found them. I've
Very
heard
good.
of them. Yes.
Yeah, they're an excellent resource. So the idea of being able to become familiar with great resources, databases that produce quality studies is very important for you. Okay. All databases aren't built the same. I'll say that. So we get a sense of 2008. Here's a source here in 2013 from the American Economy. All right. And the author. And so children's resources and collective households identification, estimation, and application to child poverty in Malawi. All right. So you see, I mean, there's literally thousands of articles. I would suggest getting some of the latest information on your topic area. Now, let's go up a little bit. Let's specify a little more. Poverty in Malawi. Let's see. Poverty of pastors in Malawi. So, in 2013, in the Journal of Religion in Africa, there's some kind of documentation about poverty and pastors. 2002, Urban Challenge as a challenge for ministry within Malawi context. Somewhere in the context of this, they're going to be dealing with pastors and poverty. Here's a 2012. I'm not familiar with this City Seer, okay, and it's probably more a database that's local or specific to Africa.
Yeah.
But here it is in a theology of freedom and equality, the experiences of pastors' wives in the Baptist Convention. So we go down and take a look at all the different resources that are there. All right. So let's go to NGOs in the Philippines. And violence.
Well, it's changing there. I think it would probably be also interesting there. Like I'm looking at, cited by 68. So I think it's always helpful to see what articles have been cited by others.
Yes.
Those are articles that often lends, authority to that particular article.
Yeah, very good. Excellent point. That's right. How many people have used this, have cited it? Absolutely. Absolutely. Is a 2011 Undoing Violence, Unbounding Precarity Beyond the Frames of Terror in the Philippines. And this deals specifically with NGOs. And that's a relatively recent article. So it will sometimes have dissertations of people. This might be a dissertation here. Mass violence and struggle for reconciliation and identity conflicts, negotiating memories and justice in the Philippines.
Let me mention one other issue since you're on that.
Sure.
One issue that I've tried to emphasize is whenever possible, don't use a secondary source. For example, if we're looking at this dissertation and say this person cites Jones, if at all possible, go try to find the Jones article as opposed to citing this dissertation. It's just in terms of academic integrity, that's really the better way. The only time you'd really be justified in using a secondary source is if you just absolutely are unable to access that source that this person is citing.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Great. Great. Okay. So this is the easy part. It's about identifying that you have a really wonderful database through Google Scholar. That you
Dr. Rogers?
Yes.
Excuse me, this is Theo. I have a question, if I may.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. What I have found is that a lot of information like this related to the peacemaking and reconciliation and violence. And the gap that I think I've identified is that there isn't a lot of research so far that I've found on what is the role of the leaders? How do the leaders of these NGOs change and make their NGOs more responsive and dealing with the increase in systematic violence? So my focus is on organizational leadership. So if that holds, my research, how do I go about documenting the gap? In other words, it won't be I won't be able to, so that's my question. How do I document a gap in the research?
Great. So what you first want to do, and if what you're looking at is adaptive leadership, is basically, that's an area that you want to possibly write on, Theo, adaptive leadership within NGOs.
Right.
Now, identifying adaptive leadership practices within, now that you have the term, identifying adaptive leadership practices within NGOs in the Philippines is going to be a new research area.
Okay.
Okay. Because until you've identified what that is, and you've just identified it perfectly for me, so it's leadership in organizations and NGOs. But here's what are adaptive leadership processes within NGOs for leaders?
Oh, okay.
Now, that question changes. So until you can come back and tell me that doesn't exist,
right,
you haven't found the gap yet.
Okay, all right. So I found the gap only because I was looking at more of peacemaking and violence and the role of NGOs in that area.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, thanks.
You want to drill down now to leadership, adaptive leadership practices within NGO organizations.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Dr. Rogers, may I ask a question, please? It's Joanne.
Sure.
When you're doing the Google Scholar search, if you look on the right of your screen, you can find PDFs and maybe additional, but there are some where you go into them, you only are left with the abstracts. And my question is, especially for a number of Taylor and Francis research, how do I get to those ones? Because there are a number of databases which I can see, but I don't get access to it.
Yes, some of them, unfortunately, Joanne, some of them you have to just buy the document. I can't get around that. But what I would do, before you purchase a document, what I would do is I would cut and paste, get that information, cut and paste that into every free database that you can find. Okay.
Okay.
Cut it and put it into ProQuest and see if ProQuest, since we have access through ProQuest, see if it comes up for you as a free document.
Okay, that's brilliant. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Test every database you have. Make sure before you purchase it. If that's the only way that you can get it, then that's the only way you can.
Brilliant.
Some of them sell the information. Some of it you just gotta, continue searching and drilling down.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else? Joanne brought up an excellent point. some of these titles have PDFs. All you have to do is click the PDF and it comes up. The full article comes up. It's a free article for you. If it's useful, save it and use it as a credible source. Any other questions? Down along the bottom, you have a number of different sources. I mean, you just keep on clicking, and it's literally, it is an unending journey. It really is. It's infinite.
I also suggest on your computer that, you know, as you're working on a dissertation, you, of course, you create a folder for that dissertation, and then you put your subtopics as subfolders on the computer, so you can then begin to save a lot of these online articles within subfolders that you've put on your computer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Okay, I think that's it for me. That's it for me, Bill.
All right.
There's no questions.
Well, I just appreciate it. Yeah, we're probably to the end of our time frame here, but this has just been a very helpful session in my mind. This is the kind of information that is just critical as you are working on your, your dissertation. And so I think at that point, I'm not sure if my video looks like it's delayed. I'm not sure, at least when I see it on my screen. But again, it looks like we can make this document available on the website. And when Dr. Robinson Rogers sends that to me, I will go ahead and post that in the file area. I think I'll put it in the info tab so that it'll be available no matter what lesson you happen to be looking at, because this is the kind of information that will be valuable for all the writing of all the various chapters, both in your proposal and in your dissertation document.
Great, great. Glad I could be of service.
Right. Okay, well, again, looking forward to continuing to get your proposal chapters week by week, and I will try to give you feedback on those issues, places that you can possibly narrow the focus. I also try to make comments on the academic writing issues. Some of it just seems really picky and technical, but it's a habit you need to get into writing in a particular style when you're doing academic writing. We really would prefer that you begin to use that style, in your coursework. Now, most of you, I think, have probably gotten through most of your courses at BGU, but as faculty, we're trying to help students work on some of these writing issues in each one of their courses preceding the dissertation, so that by the time you get to this place in the process, you will have gained, I hope, some habitual ways of writing in a very systematic manner and an objective manner. And I think, like I've said at other places, those of us who have been involved in teaching or preaching, it's very easy to adopt that style when we're doing academic writing. And that particular style is just not always appropriate within the context of academic writing. And so just some of these concepts that have been emphasized today are really important. And just trying to maintain that objective style. And again, that doesn't in any way take from your passion, okay? You're going to be passionate, but the fact that you're able to take your passion and interpret it into an academic style, that will be received across many sectors in the academic community, in religious communities, in business communities, in sociological, psychological communities. That particular writing style will be accepted. And then your style won't get in the way of your message. So that is so important. Okay, well, I think we're going to go ahead and close down the session. Again, appreciate all of you making the effort to join us today. And,
Dr. Payne?
Go ahead, Theo.
Excuse me, I have a general question. It just has to do with when you grade our homework assignments or you make comments on them. Do you want us to immediately make those corrections or just make the correction in the next time we submit our homework assignment?
I like to be able to see it in the next week's assignment. I often will go back and look at the document, see what I've said, and see if you've tried to address those issues.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, I don't need you to send it back to me immediately because I probably won't grade it. I won't have the time, but I will have time the following week to look at what you've done in a previous
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, with that, let's go ahead and sign off. And again, I'll see you in the on the Populi site in some form. Thanks again.
Thanks, Dr.
Bye, everybody.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.